Alright, I want to talk through what I've been doing with difficulty in mission generation, just for the sake of my own sanity, because it's gone on so long and well, it's been so much harder than I imagined, and saying it out loud helps me convince myself that the problems I've been dealing with are real. So, the problem. There's two things. There's the existing mission system was flawed, and also I wanted to add something to it. And its flaws were that it would sometimes uh, it would pick. Okay, this is hard to explain. The mission listings wants to generate a set of missions ranging from easy to extremely hard. It wants to ensure that there's at least one of each of those difficulty types. So there's one easy, there's one medium, there's one hard, there's one each of the harder difficulties beyond that, audacious and mistake. And then it can also add a couple of extra ones in that it doesn't matter what difficulty those are. But it needs to be able to guarantee that you get an easy one at least, and it needs to be able to guarantee there'll be a medium one. And it would sometimes end up generating one. You tell it to generate a hard mission, and that hard mission would actually appear lower in the listings than one of the audacious missions, which is supposed to be even harder. And it would pay more, and it would actually be more difficult. The pay and the actual challenge were pretty much in line with each other, but the difficulty you'd asked it for was wrong. The other thing wrong with it was that if you asked it for a hard mission, it would, for all of the different ways a mission can be hard, like a lot of guards, a lot of turrets, a very big ship, it would pick a value within a random range, but it would be a pretty narrow random range, and that range would just be very hard. Like the lowest value on a hard ship, there'll always be a good amount of guards. It'll always be pretty big. It'll always have some turrets. It'll always have some of this other thing. And so all those things go together, and there's not enough variance. And so that's kind of that's the part I wanted to improve. I wanted to be able to generate a mission where it's a very big ship, but it has very light guards, or it's a relatively easy mission, except that you've got a super tight time limit, or it's just a medium-sized ship, but it's just fucking crawling with turrets. Well, not crawling because turrets don't move. So this all pointed to me, both the problems with it and the thing I wanted to add, pointed to me to the idea that all of these different ways a mission can be difficult should have pay values associated with them. Either a flat addition, like, okay, there's shielded guards, so that means +5 to difficult to pay, and hence difficulty. Or as a multiplier. It's a very big ship, then all the other things we've added already that make it difficult should be multiplied by some value. Like if we've made a ship that's worth 20 currency, and then we make it 3 times as big, it should now be worth 60 currency, because it's just the same challenges, but you've got to do 3 times more of them. It might not be as linear as that, but something like that. That really fucking destroyed me trying to make that work. It is so complex. There are so many different ways, and the range, the full range from like the minimum for each of these values to the maximum is vast. We're talking from 0 guards to 90 guards. So it is vast, and that's just for one variable, and there are about, I don't know, 12 variables, and each one can vary. Not only is that the maximum dynamic range, but then the number of different options it should be able to choose within that range is also high. It shouldn't be. It's no good if it's either 0, 45 guards, or 90 guards. That's terrible. It's got to be. Some ships have no guards, some ships have 5 guards, some ships have 15 guards, some ships have 25 guards, some ships have 35 guards. You get the idea. Same for turrets, same for all these other things. And so this was me sort of pay as difficulty points. That was the idea. Like, instead of saying I want a hard mission, I say I want a mission that's worth 50 difficulty points. That's your budget. Spend them amongst these different things randomly. I think that would succeed in making the kind of, oh, it's a small, easy mission, but it's got a really tight time limit type thing. Sometimes. The rest of the time it would be this crazy garbage mishmash of like, oh, it's like there's no guards and a million turrets and it's got heat sensors and it's huge, but it's also got no alarm time, and stuff like that. And so it would be, I think it would end up being too random. Because I tried basically a smaller version of that for guard kit. Let's see if I have some of that to show. Guard kit. Add difficulty points to guard roll. So this is the thing where you give a budget to spend on the guards, a particular roll of guards. Right now we just have A and B rolls, and the ship is split more or less evenly between those types of guards. And if you give it 12 points to spend on the A guards, then it will go through this loop and it will see if might spend some points on a shotgun, might spend some points on giving them shields, might spend some points on giving them armor. And where's the list? Oh yeah, so this is like the list of all the different ways they can be difficult and the costs for those. The highest ones are shield and armor because those outright prevent you from attacking them unless you have the right equipment. And that, so I tested that and that worked, but it was pretty random. It gets pretty crazy. And doing that for all of the ways that a mission can be difficult, like I say, that's just guard kit is just one of them. So the fact that there's like 10 subdivisions of that gives you some idea of the complexity of the whole problem. So that would be too random. And then I went through a whole bunch of other possible systems. That got so complicated that I was kind of like retreating back into my shell and being like, can I just tweak the existing system? Like it is broken. Well, it is malfunctioning in some circumstances, but it's not that bad. I just want to check it's still recording. So maybe I could just, is there some way I can just patch that, just add onto it, even if adding onto it didn't fix the existing problem. If it just added variety, that might be good enough. And really, when I looked at it, the thing that the old system was doing that solved a whole load of problems was you pass it a difficulty level, and it has some kind of range for those values. There's a minimum and there's a maximum. The thing that was wrong with it was randomly choosing each of those independently, so all of them could end up being hard, all of them could end up being easy, and if you make the dynamic range small enough that that's not a big deal, then all of them are the same. But the idea of having upper and lower bounds for a difficulty level solves a whole load of problems. All those randomness things I was talking about, the kind of wild card element, maybe you want that sometimes, but most of the time you want it to be kind of sensible. But you don't want it to pick all of the hard things at once. You don't want it to pick all of the easy things at once. So the problem, picking them independently doesn't work. Having a budget to spend is okay, but in terms of just the code you write, the actual way you implement that, it doesn't work to say like, oh, as long as I've got 20 points, here's the chance of spending 20 points giving the guards shields, and then move on to the next thing and say, okay, if I've got 20 points, here's the chance to spend 20 points on turrets. The problem with that is you'll be much more likely to end up with a load of shields, and a bit less likely to end up with a load of turrets, and whatever you put at the end of that list will almost never get spent because there's a very high chance the points will already have been spent. And if it's a really simple system where every single thing is worth 1 point, and you know exactly how many there'll be on every type of ship, then you can fudge the probabilities so that it ends up being roughly even across all of them. But if they're weighted, it becomes a lot more complicated to do that. So my idea here was each of these things is a matter that can be settled once. Anytime it's settled, it can spend any or all of its budget, so I wasn't sure about that. I think that's a bad idea, actually. You should have a sort of a maximum you can spend on any one element. So could you make an array of those things and then resolve them in a random order? And the answer is no. Not easily. It's very hard. If you write like 12 lines of code that decide all this, which would be pretty efficient, it's very hard to execute those 12 lines of code in a random order. That is not a facility that that is commonly provided for, I don't think. Pretty sure that GameMaker doesn't have a way of doing that that's simple. I have done things like that in the past where, and you sort of have to hack your way around it. And so that's kind of what I started to go towards. And then the big insight that I had that made this, so one of them was that let's copy the difficulty ranges from the previous system. And that helps a lot. And then the other thing that helps a lot is let's stop thinking of it as if you want to pick these different aspects and say which ones are going to be hard and which ones are going to be easy within some budget or within some limits, so that they can't all be hard and they can't all be easy within this difficulty level. Then I can't remember what I was going to say now. What makes it easy? Oh yeah, you can't really do it by values right away. It becomes a lot easier putting those things in an array and resolving them in a random order, which is what I'm talking about here. If they're lines of code, that is difficult, but they don't have to be. They can be basically a string or an enumerator, so that you can have a conceptual list of ways a mission can be difficult. And I did this so I can show it to you in case that doesn't make any sense. Sorry, set up mission 4. So here are the different ways a mission can be difficult. and it makes an array of those, and they are just these are just values that don't correspond to anything meaningful, and these are just strings describing them. And then what it does at the start of a difficulty level is it makes one thing, it goes to that list and picks a random one, and then says, let's make that thing easier. And rather than actually setting the value right now, we don't want to worry about how many, like the reason, so let's say we picked alarm time, and we want to make that easier. We don't right then and there say, here's what the value for the alarm time should be, because the relationship between that and the pay that we give you for the mission is unique to alarm time, and it's even unique to that value for alarm time. If we pick 15, that means that the pay should be 3 higher. If we pick 60, the pay should be 2 lower. There's a lot of specific special cases for every single thing, and that's utterly unlike everything to do with sentries. Sentries is utterly different in every way. So you can't do a loop that goes through and says, oh, let's do it to this difficulty type, and then therefore add on 5 pay, because that 5 pay is totally different for everything. So it doesn't try and do that. All it does is store the concept that the alarm time is going to be easier. And so that just says, in the difficulty modifiers array, which we've established here, this is just like taking that and then putting all those values in an array. This one's 0, so this one's 0, this one's 1, this one's 2. Goes to that array and then just stores a value of -1. -1 means easy. 1 means hard. 0 means normal. And so goes through, finds 1, makes it easier. Then it goes through, this is for the hard difficulty, so we make one thing easier and then we make 3 things harder. So in general, it'll have a lot of things that are particularly tricky about this mission, and possibly one that is easy. I have not attempted, this is the simplest version I can do of this, and I remind myself here that I don't care if we pick an easy one and then the hard one actually picks that one to be hard. If that happens, it'll just overwrite it with hard, so there'll be no easy thing about this mission. That's fine. It's fine for 2 reasons. One is it adds a bit of randomness, which is actually good, and the other is we're not adjusting pay yet. So we are going to do that when we apply these, and if we said it was going to be easy up here, then we overwrote it down here. The easiness will never get applied, so it will never affect the pay, and the pay will accurately reflect whether the thing is hard. So that was the kind of big leg up that I needed, the kind of the step towards a solution is, these are concepts, they're not values yet. They're just the concept of the heat sensors being hard, the concept of war zones being hard. I've picked hard as the, like right now I can only make hard missions because this is a lot of code, and just to test it I needed to test on one difficulty level. I picked hard because it is kind of in the middle, despite the name. It's the one where like everything can happen on a hardship. There's nothing that's so hard you wouldn't ever add it to a hardship. But also it's not trying to bias things to being like, it's not going to max out. The highest difficulty level might not be a good representative for how difficulty levels will work, because it will probably pick almost everything. It will probably pick like half of these things. So hard is kind of a mid-range thing. And then pick that so that we could test the system, and it works. But there are still things that are too complicated to fit within this, and one of them is how many guards are in a cluster. That used to be a separate thing. I don't know, I've taken it out now. It used to be guard A kit, that's how many points you can spend on the equipment that type of guard has, so it will have very good equipment if you spend a lot of points on that. Then there would also be guard A numbers, and guard B numbers, and guard B kit, and so it could pick randomly like, oh, these guys are well equipped but they're not very numerous, and these guys are not very well equipped but they are numerous. That was the kind of thing I wanted. Of course, in practice, what it ends up doing is frequently, like at least as frequently, picking guard A is tough, and there's loads of them. And then sometimes it will also pick, and guard B's tough. So it's just bad news all around. And that's okay, like sometimes at the very upper end, but actually making those things independent wasn't good. So guard A numbers has been worked into the kit. So now one of the kit things that you can have shields, you can have shotguns, you can have explosives, or you can have numerous. Numerous means nothing for you personally, but it means that you'll just have a lot of friends around. So when we place a cluster of guard A guards, we use this maximum value, and again this is also interdependent on difficulty level, so it's a concept when we say you're numerous. What we actually mean by that varies depending on what difficulty level we're aiming for. If it's an easy mission, numerous might be 2 guards or 3 at most. On a hard mission, a numerous cluster of guards would have 5 guards in it, and an especially light one would have 2. So, and now the reason integrating that into kit works well is that it's less likely to pick both shielded and numerous. That's much harder for it to do, and if we reduce its budget, we can make it impossible for it to do that. And then also, you're hopefully getting a sense of why this is difficult now. The one thing that doesn't fit into this, it doesn't work at all, is the objective type and the playstyle clause. Because it gets too complicated. Because the objective type, we want to kind of pick a random one, but we also can offer you a special mission type, which is things like don't leave any witnesses, don't hurt anyone, don't get seen, don't set off any alarms, don't kill anyone, and an objective of redoing this system was to make it so that we can add those clauses even to some of the easier missions. Because right now it only adds those to the 2 hardest missions. Like there's just easy, medium, hard, and then there's a couple that have one of these clauses on them and are incredibly difficult in every other way. So only if you get to the top tier do you ever get to interface with these interesting restrictions. Previously I tried to solve this by giving you bonuses for playing this way on some of the other missions, and people just didn't pay attention to them, they just ignored them and didn't see it as... It didn't count as variety. People did not think, oh, this is a no witnesses mission. They just did the mission and maybe they tried to leave no witnesses, but they didn't really care that much either way because it was treated as a bonus. The ones where it's a condition of the mission worked better. I think I'm actually not going to make it fail you if you fail this condition, but I'm going to present it to you as this is a mission to do this without being seen. If you are seen, 60% of your pay is cut, so you still get something. And the reason for that is just that it's less interesting if the second you're seen, the whole thing is over and there's literally no point in staying on the ship. If it's literally the contract is cancelled, there's no money in it for you now, you might as well just leave, and then I'm just encouraging you to play the game less. I'm just saying, like, sorry, this content is dead to you now, it can't help you in any way. Whereas if I feel like 60% is a good amount where it's like, you really, really don't want to lose 60% of your pay. But if you do lose 60% of your pay, there's still 40% of your pay left in the mission. And if you've just started, if you fuck up instantly, then yes, maybe it's not worth it and you might want to go back to the jobs listing board. But if you're halfway through, it's worth seeing it through. And yeah, mission clause, this whole chunk of code is describing the ways in which special mission types restrict what kind of missions you can take on. Because if I'm giving a mission to harm no one, then you can't hijack a ship because you have to at least... It's not strictly impossible to hijack a ship without harming anyone, but it's a weird niche case where you would need to specifically have a weapon that doesn't hurt the captain. Like, the only way to get the captain to stand up from his seat is to attack him, and if you're using anything that knocks him out or kills him, you've already failed the condition. If he's armoured and you're using a non-armor piercing weapon, then it'll kind of get him out of the seat, but it won't hurt him, and that would be the only way to do it. So it's very dependent on the particular situation, and it becomes a bit of a bullshit thing if we required you to do that. That is different, though, to... You see, if it selects no harm as a special mission type, it can still give you an assassination mission, or a capture mission where you have to knock someone out, because that only applies to non-targets. And so you might ask, well, why can't you do a hijack mission and just say that the captain is a target? You can't, because that's not true. The captain isn't the target. No, that's not what the mission's asking you to do. It doesn't say hurt the captain. That's not the job. If we say hijack this thing without harming anyone, those words mean hijack it without harming anyone. If we say assassinate, the way it phrases it for an assassination mission is kill this person, harm no one else. And if we said hijack the ship, harm no one else, what the fuck are we talking about? Harm no one else than what? And yes, you might learn through experience that it's usually the captain, but that's just a whole different conceptual thing. And making a mission type that's like, take out the captain of the ship, then that's just boring. That's not like a hijack mission. Plus, note there's a whole other reason you can't do a hijack mission if you can't harm anyone, because to hijack a ship, you need to clear it out. You actually need to take everybody out. So everyone would be targets, and it would be meaningless to say no target, no non-target injuries. So yeah, these are so complicatedly interrelated that you cannot just add them to this array. Originally I had like objective in here, and then special mission type, clauses, I call them basically clauses, in your contract telling you how to play a certain way. You can't do that because the way that you end up applying these things is, complicated, but ultimately all it can do is pass in 3 values of here's what the easy thing looks like, here's what the hard one looks like, here's what the medium one looks like. And as you can see, there are like 5 different playstyle conditions, and there are I think 6 or 7 different objective types. 6, I think. No, 5. There are only 5. Huh. And so if I set an easy, medium, and a hard version for the hard difficulty level, then it would reduce variety. And each of those has a unique effect on the pay. Like a hijack mission is much harder than the other ones because you've got to clear out the whole ship. And then playstyle conditions also multiply the pay by certain values and things. So this is actually leading towards where I am now, because that is done. Realizing I had to handle objective types and special clauses separately was something I figured out yesterday, and that is another thing where I don't know what the word for these things, like boons or sort of shortcuts, or yeah, let's call them shortcuts. Like little cheats, things that make it not a universal, consistent system, and taking things out, making them special cases. Usually you want to avoid that, but when the problem is sufficiently complex, you just have to do that. There are just certain things do not boil down to all being instances of the same kind of object, or being categories, being members of the same set, or things like that. Some things are just different. Playstyle conditions and objective types are just different to guard B kit points or the number of sentries on a ship. It's just different. It has to be handled by a different system. So you just have to make a bunch of different systems, and that's one of them. The thing I don't have yet is I can't, because of this, because it's going to multiply the pay by like 1.6 or 2 in some cases, that is going to bring it way out of line with what we hoped to get when we said we wanted a hard mission. You know, it starts with like the difficulty +1 times 10 plus a random range. I thought I'd taken that out actually. But roughly sort of 10 times the difficulty plus a bit. And if we then multiply that by 2, it's not just that we're going to be outside of the hard range, it's that this is now officially an audacious mission, or a mistake mission. That's hard to solve, because in order to stay within the difficulty bounds, let's say the maximum amount we ever want to pay you for a hard mission is 40, and it's not so much about the pay, it's about how much difficulty we give you if we're only going to pay you 40, then we need to know whether we're going to do this before we do any of this. So there are some ways we could do that. One is we pick the special mission type first, then when we're doing this, all of the pay values that we're adjusting, we multiply. Actually no, that doesn't work, because this system is not a budget-based system. It doesn't give you like 50 points and then spend them and only stop when it runs out. Because I tried that, and I tried things like that, and it got kind of out of control as to how it spent it. This is a completely sort of contrived system where it picks one easy thing and picks 3 hard things, and then goes through and adds those. And these have very different effects on the pay. Sometimes the hard thing only adds 1, and sometimes it adds 10 to the pay. So this gives a pretty wide range of pay, and I'm just kind of hoping that the difficulty range, because it can only pick 3 of them, it could pick 3 10s, I guess, so it could be up to +30. And then the lowest it could be is probably +4 or something. Like, there are lots of negatives that don't remove anything, but lots of easy values that are 0 rather than an actual negative, but there aren't many hard ones that don't at least add 2. So there'll be a range anyway, but if we multiply it by 2 as well, then the range gets huge. The way I'm going to solve this is yet another shortcut, because I don't think turning this into a budget system removes the one thing that works about it, which is that it keeps things fairly controlled. It keeps them within a normal range with a few exceptions, and that few exceptions system is the thing that really works. The fact that it produces varying pay is good. The fact that some of these will be unusually hard, some of these will be unusually easy is fine. And when it goes down to easy missions and medium missions, we're not going to be picking 3 things. We're going to be picking like 1 thing. And so the worst it could be is 10 more. And the least it could be is 1 more. And so that is fine. The lower in difficulty you go, the more controlled it is. And that means that when we ask for an easy mission, we'll for sure get an easy mission. When we ask for a medium mission, we'll almost certainly get a medium mission. Maybe it might slip into hard if we get the worst possible roll, but that's fine. Particularly because it won't be at the upper end of the hard bracket. It'll be, it will be pretty similar to the toughest medium mission you've done. But playstyle conditions, like I say, make that variance so big that if you attach like the not seen playstyle to a mission that is otherwise within the range for the easy variables, you end up with something that's probably a hard mission, because not seen means no living witnesses and don't hurt anyone. So if someone sees you, there's nothing you can do about it because you're not allowed to kill them, and they'll be a living witness. So basically no witnesses, no one can see you at all, so you have to ghost it. And I mean, if there are literally no guards, then fine, that isn't hard. But if there's a couple, then there's no beginner. It's just not a beginner level mission then, like to be not seen at all. If there are 2 guards, that is a difficult challenge. So the solution to that, like I say, is another shortcut, which is going to be when we... it's a little bit like the old system. The old system generates a whole bunch of normal missions, then at the end it does 2 special ones. So it's not allowed to pick a special mission type. Here's the thing that says, only if we were told a special mission type do we have one at all. If we don't, it's just no, we have special mission type equals none, and we go down to here and we pick a truly random objective type, and there's no playstyle condition. So I'm going to do something similar to that, but not restrict it to the hardest ones. So what it'll do is make sure there's an easy, make sure there's a medium, make sure there's a hard probably, and then pass in some random values, or pass in intentionally some easy, medium, and hard ones, but plus a playstyle condition. And then when the playstyle condition gets applied and we multiply the pay, I'm going to add something down here that says, okay, if our pay is like 90, that's called an audacious mission. Because this system, if I've balanced it right, the pay will actually reflect difficulty. And so we asked for a medium, then we added a playstyle condition. That basically makes it a wild card mission. It's a thing where a whole load of values are going to be, or the values we picked up above are not going to be the real thing that determines difficulty. It's going to be the fact that you have to do it without anyone seeing you, or without hurting anyone. That's a huge deal, and that's going to dramatically affect the pay. And so then you're never really going to get an easy mission that has one of these conditions. But we might start with an easy mission, add one of these conditions, and end up with a hard mission or a medium mission. And hopefully that will achieve the objective. So that's quite a lot of talking, but it's helpful for me to get all this straight. And I guess that's what I'm going to do next. Actually, this is my to-do list, so it might tell me what I'm supposed to do next. Redo details panel. Oh yeah, so the mission listing itself doesn't reflect the way I've changed these stats now. I also have a bug. Ship immediately secured. Assassination objective immediately done. Small bug, when you take an assassination mission, it immediately tells you you've killed the person and you've won. So assassination missions don't work at all. And then, yeah, I could try setting the variables for a medium mission, and then I can try applying clauses to easy and medium missions and seeing if those result in difficult missions, and seeing if the system can reflect that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.